Howdy hunters, we're back with our penultimate entry into the Nightwalk boss ranking series. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that juicy top 10, and let's get into the action. Number 25, Demon of Hatred.
Jesus Christ, you wouldn't believe it! They're legit storming the castle! It's all at war in there!
What? No way!
Yeah, I just saw what was going on and ran. I'll have to pick up your hemorrhoid cream another time. Anyways, I think I might be in the clear now. I just gotta stop by Gyobu's arena real quick on the... Wait a second. I'm gonna have to call you back.
So I know our big red boy is a controversial boss amongst Sekiro lovers. Usually people absolutely love him, or think he's wildly overrated. Yeah, I'm on the side that love him. I mean, look at this, it's madness! And then he jumps and you gotta dodge that, and then you gotta, oh my god, look at your ring of fire, holy shit, jump, jump, jump! Okay, take a deep breath. It's a long battle of attrition. One that shuffles the mechanics enough to surprise players and has enough damage for one or two shots, no matter what vigor you're at. What I can say though is I'm a sucker for a Bloodborne boss, and this is a peak level Bloodborne boss through and through. It throws a more calculated and grand version of the first phase of Guardian Ape at you, and I'm absolutely here for it. I can see why people might think this is a bit too grindy for them, as my last fight lasted almost 6 minutes, but every moment is well worth it in my book. To learn it the first time is a grueling and rewarding process, and the setting, visuals, lore, and challenge are peak levels of FromSoft. Number 24, Starscourge Radahn. Wait, wrong game. Wait, wrong game. There we go. Before there are riots in the streets at the fact that Richad isn't in the top 1, give me a moment to unleash my only complaints really quickly. And that's my problem. The fight ends way too quickly. The nerf to his damage was brutal in my eyes, as the fight already encouraged the all-out war promised in the cinematic. Most people are going to be summoning, and I unfortunately am unable to get through even half of his theme during his fight. Imagine Radahn with like 30% more HP, truly posing a daunting threat. Nowadays, I feel like I can steamroll him way too easily, let alone if I use the summons, which I think is the optimal way to battle. Now, let's get on to the positive, of which there are... There's a lot of positives. God damn, what a perfect build-up. This boss is like the highly refined sequel to the Burnt Ivory King of Dark Souls 2, with a proper cutscene to set the stage. The haunting soundtrack prior to your battle sets a melancholic tone before all hell breaks loose. And as you charge into the dunes towards the towering silhouette in the distance, you know you're in for something special. Do we even need to talk about that Phase 2 transition? Hell yeah we do. We have the gravity magic not only providing hilarious horse lore, but also an unmatched catastrophic belly flop from the heavens. I will admit, I got one shot the first time staring at this cataclysmic event. The soundtrack echoes the masculine, honorable energy of our hero, and it's truly a festival worthy of this godlike figure. Every attack is oozing with character and intrigue, and charging into battle with my homies is a moment I won't ever forget. It felt bigger than Elden Ring charging this menace. Number 23, Gehrman, the First Hunter. The fight with Gehrman, it's great, but what makes this top tier material? Everything surrounding it. The cutscene sets the finale up better than any other in FromSoft's catalog. The voice acting gives me chills, the arena is unforgettable, and the soundtrack? It's one I've been addicted to since the first moment I heard it rolling over those flowery hills. Gehrman is quick, agile, and surprisingly fun, but there are a lot of fights like this throughout the series. There are not a lot of fights that get me this invested in the moment, wrapped up in something that maximizes on the medium of video games. Number 22, Orphan of Kos. Sorry, I was doing my Orphan of Kos impression. Anyways, this might just be the quintessential FromSoft brutality check. Yeah, sure, Melania is harder in my opinion, by quite a bit. But I play every one of those games solo, no BS. I run at the boss over and over again with whatever build I have until I win. I don't use bleed katanas, I don't use summons, but most players are willing to use the pieces they have at their disposal to make quick work of Milady. Orphan of Kos, on the other hand, even if you use the tools that the game has, of which there are not that many, he is still gonna beat you with this shrimp placenta as many times as he wants. When I played through the game again, I really struggled against the Orphan more than I ever have in my first few playthroughs. This time was well over 50. I might admit, I got a little bit pissed. I wanted to throw hands with the shrimp-wielding weirdo, but he kept busting me. Maybe I placed him a little bit lower out of spite, to which I say, deserved, asshole. In all honesty, while this fight is pure adrenaline, it doesn't have the same charm or grandeur as some above it. It might be the perfect challenge, but it does lack a tiny bit in the intrigue department, even though it's such a unique and unsettling setting and a perfectly designed foe. I maybe didn't feel as emotionally attached to the battle with this guy, but oh my god, when he runs over the freaking phase 2, Sorry, I just flashbacks to Nam. Anyways, number 21, Dragon Lord Placidusax. I'm just a measly dragon, don't mind me. I'm just ancient and slowly meandering. I don't even have all my heads. This is a boss fight that sneaks up on you. Sure, it looks gorgeous as you're teleported through space and time to find this ancient relic cocooned ominously in the sky, the godlike structure encapsulating you with its power. But when the fight actually starts, its pace is almost leisurely. It's not too easy, but it's not the chaos of the typical late game bouts. That is until the teleporting starts. Placidusax vaporizes from existence, leaving you in a frantic state, spastically checking to see where he might reappear. Then, you see a cloud in the sky, and Placidusax plummets straight towards you, like Radahn, but with the calculated precision of ancient wisdom. It only gets crazier from there, as the music mimics your breath. Whenever a cinematic move is hitting, it leaves you in this state of anxiety, because the music completely cuts out. It's just you and the sound effects of whatever Placidusax is planning. This includes when he summons a massive bolt of lightning to use as a nuclear bomb, or when he continually dive bombs you through his red lightning clouded teleports. It all culminates in one of the craziest ultimate moves in FromSoft history, with a laser to make Midir look ashamed. The only thing keeping Placidusax from higher is that his first phase, while not at all boring or bad, is not quite as exhilarating as the first phase of other large bosses to come. It can be difficult to read exactly what he's doing sometimes. Other than that, I could not have asked for more. Number 20, Malenia, Blade of Mikola. Alright, this is the big one. You either love or hate Malenia. She is either a top 2 boss in the series, or a bottom 3 boss in the series, and there is no in between. I've been all over the map with this boss. She's essentially the cultural zeitgeist right now, the icon of the game. There are streamers who have faced her for dozens of hours straight just to scream with unrivaled triumph at the moment of victory. There are others who will relentlessly post about how broken she is until their fingers are sore from the flame. And if I'm being honest, I completely understand both positions. While I was 70 tries in or so against Malenia, I had moments where I was certain she would place in my bottom tier. But then at 80, I thought she was the most glorious creation of mankind. At 81, I wanted to murder her firstborn child, and at 82, I forgave her. She is divisive through and through. The thing is, when I look back and reflect on my time fighting Malenia, looking past some of the BS, I do see potentially the best fight of my time in gaming. I see one of my favorite transition cutscenes, accompanied by a jaw-dropping score. I see flair and character in every animation. I see challenge deserving of the title of the hardest Soulsborne Hero Ring boss. But despite how positively my experience ended with Malenia, some of the process was not as smoothly handled as some of the bosses above her. When Malenia is on point, she really is unmatched. But there are some mechanical inconsistencies that bring the bout just out of that top 10 range. It's so close, and I think Malenia and Orphan could have the biggest room for growth as bosses, because they always will pose a challenge, even decades into FromSoft Souls-likes. Coming back to them is probably the most rewarding after you've mastered the combat of the games to really test your limits. But for now, she's going to place right at number 20. Number 19, Pontiff Sulyvahn. In stark contrast with Malenia, this is a consistent mechanical masterpiece. It's an iteration of many previous FromSoft ideas executed to perfection. We have 2 distinct swords wielded a la Fume Knight, but the visual distinction mirroring the intent/lore of the character adds even more depth. We have a brilliant Phase 2 pulling off a completely unique twist on the gank fights we've seen time and time again. It calls back to the splitting of Dark Lurker. Wait, more Dark Souls 2 references? Ugh. The soundtrack is yummy, I could eat it. It's angelic, which fits the church setting, but with an ominous twist befitting of the original final boss of Dark Souls 3. I've heard that parries can somewhat trivialize the encounter, but I'm not a parrier, so it's one of the massive challenges of Dark Souls 3's main game, and it hits right at that O&S midpoint. Number 18, Twin Princes. I have undoubtedly warmed up to the fabled maimed duo. If you suffered through my unscripted Dark Souls 3 boss rankings from way back in the day on this channel, you'd notice that I placed the Twin Princes pretty darn low. At the time I was frustrated with the run back and the way the teleporting made it difficult to track the boss. I especially hated when a teleport was instantly followed up with an attack to the point where you didn't really have a fair time frame to react. Compare this with Placidusax, for example, who gives you ample time to frantically figure out where he is and where he'll pop up. I also complained about the run back because I didn't know about the shortcut. Don't make fun of me, guys. But they rose in my rankings. A lot. Why is that? Well, thanks for asking, imaginary friend. First off, Lothric Castle and the Grand Archives are a brilliant area preceding the fight. You've seen this castle looming in the distance from the first level of the game, and it's all been building to this. You traverse a heavily guarded, massive, ominous bridge and enter the chamber to battle the Goliath of power that has resided above you all of this time. But it's a weak and frail boy, hardly able to hold himself up. His brother crawling from the shadows like a snake, paralyzed from the waist down. Despite their limitations, they give you an uneasy sense as Lothric delivers a fitting monologue. Each word tantalizes you to lean in and embrace their whispers. The two brothers complement each other flawlessly in another inventive duo fight from Dark Souls 3. The resurrect mechanic is only countered by careful positioning. The music prances and cascades around you as you fight what feels like the most important battle to ever happen. While there's still a cheap shot once in a while due to the RNG of the teleporting, I can't help but just be enamored with the entire fight and everything surrounding it. Superb voice acting as well. Number 17, Ricard, Lord of Blasphemy. When I originally defined this fight as not a gimmick fight, I was challenging the loaded aspect of the word, as it defines gimmick as a crutch to promote something with little intrinsic worth. Ricard is absolutely full of value. It just can only be accessed to its full extent with the Serpent, Ruler, Hunter, Greatsword, whatever it is. FromSoft has learned from their years of creating fantastic games and bosses that large enemies are hard to balance in a Souls context. The main complaint with bosses like the Last Giant is that you are endlessly chipping at massive beings' ankles, rather than engaging with them and their actual moveset. Even with great bosses like the Nameless King, the King of the Storm phase is chided as having camera problems. It's not something I personally have an issue with, but I understand others do. Ricard not only finds the mechanical means to bypass this frustration by using the Storm Ruler of Elden Ring, but it also finds a fun narrative reason as well. It's like being given kryptonite to defeat Superman if Superman was a demonic god-devouring snake monster with a face. It's a perverse and haunting battle that summons the power of hell itself to rain fire upon you. I always feel as though I have legitimately been transported to hell itself to fight this guy, and I can't get enough. Not to mention that twisted cutscene. It borderline had me nauseous the first time I saw it, and that's not a bad thing. I love horror, and this boss leans heavily into FromSoft's version of that. It's fun to watch, fun to fight, and fun to witness. All around, this might be the boss I have the most enjoyment fighting in the entire series, and I don't know why people are so quick to judge it just because you use a weapon suited for a monster of this size. Number 16, Soul of Cinder. This is the perfect Dark Souls conclusion. This is the soul of us. It is the soul of Dark Souls. The boss desperately swaps between identities, between forms of previous Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 champions. The soundtrack is bombastic yet somber, the quintessential Souls combination. Though there is an element of RNG in this fight which can cause the difficulty to vary greatly, I find it as a strength in this case because each of the 4 options are all fun to fight. The arena is an amalgamation of the darkest depths of Souls, as well as the brightest heights. There is a massive dark sign illuminating the battle-ridden field of flowers and swords, life and death mashing at the ends of the earth. I think the challenge of this fight balances perfectly, not being a brutally unbearable challenge, but not being a simple pushover either. I also love how, in classic FromSoft fashion, it's not a massive monster, but just a warrior at the end of the earth. And then Gwyn takes over. I didn't play through the games in order, but for those who did, I can imagine the moment that you heard this theme reprised in even more epic glory and saw the classic Gwyn moves, you lost it. I have to say, I find this to be a perfection of the ideas of the Gwyn fight. It's not spammy, it's balanced, challenging, and fair. What a boss. Number 15, Morgott, the Omen King. After finishing Elden Ring for the first time, I had a hard time imagining many, if any, of the bosses cracking my top 15. There are just so many bosses throughout the series I've had enough time to grow with and to love, and breaking through that personal connection I've had with so many of them for something new, it really has to wow me. All of this set the stage for Morgott not precisely making that top 15, but I've played through the game a few more times and rearranged my rankings to find Morgott landing just at the 15 marker. Why? As I said before, I found it profound to have your journey building to a monument in your sight. Like Lothric Castle in Dark Souls 3, the Erd Tree is an ever-present guiding light, like the North Star. I was so excited to see what was waiting for me on that precipice, and when it initially was a repeat of a previous fight, I was mildly disappointed. While there are variations on his moves, is it really enough to warrant a rematch? Yes, absolutely. I love the character of Morgott and his dedication to honor, responsibility, and duty despite a cruel or indifferent world surrounding him. All the successors to the throne abandoning their posts. You can hear the scorn flow from his words, and his voice acting simply gives me chills. Then the fight itself is stunning. With the city of Leyndell as the backdrop, he conjures weapon after weapon, always keeping you on the back foot as you try to grasp for what could possibly be coming next. Every piece of dialogue, every movement, it all builds this godlike figure that I still think about to this day. Phase 2 brings such inventive combat to the table, and I particularly love the red flaming sword transformation attack. It's a special battle with an awesome character. Number 14, Abyss Watchers. Yeah, like I said in my last video of this series, O and S are amazing, but there are other duo fights that I love even more. We've covered a couple so far with Pontiff and the Twin Princes, and now we have another with the Lady Maria Watchers, the Artorias Watchers, which they both work. Gang fights that manage to pull off a new and inventive way to throw multiple enemies at you will always get huge props from me, while bosses that lazily throw two enemies together will always get huge not props from me. Godskin duo. This is quite obviously the former, and the infighting builds a sense of intrigue as you wonder what's going on. You see the tendrils of the abyss grasping at the Watchers from the bottoms of their capes, and then the clashing of swords turns to you. I love that you get a buddy in this fight. Of course, he can attack you too in classic FromSoft fashion, but he can be utilized to help with careful positioning and AI manipulation. All of this awesomeness is just for one phase of the fight. Oh wait, before we go on, I forgot the amazing soundtrack and even more amazing remix done by some guy, Alex, I think. Check it out. Then we have Phase 2, which is almost like an early game version of Phase 2 Lady Maria. The flaming sword and leaping acrobatics have me salivating for more, a thirst that is quenched by one of the DLC bosses. These guys are sometimes argued as being a little easy, and maybe that's true for speedrunners or complete veterans, but I find them challenging even when I come back after a little Souls break. They always smack me around a little bit, and I love them all the more for it. Number 13. Father Gascoigne. Papa Gasoline is ooh. I could consider this my first real Soulsborne boss challenge. Yeah, I fought the Cleric Beast before this, and it definitely counts as a boss, but it only took me a couple tries. Gascoigne, on the other hand, a few more. Or a dozen more. Okay, a few dozen more. It took me plenty of tries to even figure out that he had a second phase. A phase that, mind you, terrified me to the core. I sprinted in the backwards direction and instantly died over and over again. While this fight is bursting at the seams with fun combat, insane aggression, and pulsing, heart-pumping music, the main reason he is here is the character. There is so much character in this fight. From the voice acting, to the arena, to the characterization before and after the battle, and it all comes so early in the game that you don't really even grasp it all until you look back in retrospect, after you research the lore or play the game again. I didn't know any of what I do now about his family, the music box, his lore, and even without that, he was still a favorite of mine. When I did start digging and found such a goldmine of heartbreaking content, it made me feel like I had just cracked the nut of FromSoft bosses, and it was a juicy one. There was such a deep world of content to explore, and this was one of the stories that hit me on the most visceral, emotional front. He also is perhaps the best learning tool in any of the games to teach you the mechanics of what's to come. Number 12, Dancer of the Boreal Valley. There's a reason there are famous sounds within extremely classic FromSoft enemies. A great example is the screams of the cleric beast atop his theme, or the nihil shouts from Moog. Perhaps the most ominous, despite their understated nature, are the steps from the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, as she circles her prey. From the first time I faced her until now, I felt like she has been horrendously underrated by the Souls community. There is no other boss that inspires a similar emotion in me. Let's go through some of the reasons she speaks to me so much. First, I love that you can encounter her so early in the game. She's a daunting threat, daring you to face her, though you know you aren't ready. I love that you can get a surprise encounter with her without intending it by defeating all of the other Lords of Cinder. I love her cutscene, I love her visual design, and accompanying ominous soundtrack. I love her distinct phases and varied aggression and moveset. I love her transition to phase 2, which brings one of the most terrifying attacks in the series twirling towards you. And I love her erratic yet elegant movement. It's hard to believe a boss this great isn't in the top 10, but that's FromSoft for you. Number 11, Nameless King. Nameless King just missed the top 10. Not for any faults of his own, but for the sheer quality packed in these games. I have no camera issues with this first phase, while I understand how others do. I've learned over the years that there are times to lock on, times to not lock on, and times to do a mixture of both. Once players learn this lesson, they'll have a much simpler time. The fact that he's riding Mr. Chicken while he actually fights you adds so much to this first phase, although at this point it's mostly a road bump on the way to the real fight. I can't deny the cinematic quality though. Seeing him summon lightning and slam you from atop a dragon, it's hard to think that there's other bosses in this series that could really match that level of epicness. But then the real fight begins. The king's hand shakes as he plummets his spear into his dragon, exploding his corpse with the power of lightning and storm. God, it's so epic. This fight is fluid. That's the best compliment I can give of a fight, as it feels so natural dodging and bobbing and weaving and sliding in attacks of your own between said dodges. This fight packs in pretty much everything I like, from the grand and epic scale to the one-on-one warrior battle, all held in one cohesive unit, and it's really something special. Now make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay updated, because I'm going to be coming out with my top 10 best of the series very soon. So keep an eye out for that. Let me know down below what you guys think so far of the list. And hope you guys have a great day. Peace out.